Welcome to this week of entrepreneurial marketing. This is Sean Canary. We're going to talk a little bit this week about the two chapters ahead of us in weeks 9 and 10, which include supply chain management as well as the integrated marketing communications chapter. Really understanding that promotional element of the 4 P's of marketing. In addition to that, I did want to let you know that I recently put a bonus discussion up in the assignments category. This bonus assignment is to identify 4 separate products, not the same product, but four separate products that are in each stage of the life cycle, product life cycle stage. There's 4 distinct stages of the life cycle stages of a product. We'll discuss that a little bit later here, but I want you to identify 4 separate products that are in each stage of that life cycle stage. And then I want you to tell me why you feel that way, because you may identify something that's not in a particular stage of the life cycle, but your reasoning may be sound. So I want you to tell me exactly why you feel that the Apple iPod is in the decline stage of the life cycle. I want you to tell me a little bit more about why you feel it is in that stage. So again, I want you to go ahead and complete this. And then, as always, make sure that you're keeping up with the reading because there is your week quizzes due. Very important to note that these aren't the chapters, those are the weeks. So make sure that you're following along in the syllabus as far as which chapters they are, because again, we don't use the McGraw-Hill book exactly. We use an LCC version of the book. The chapters do not align with the weeks. Again, just to keep that in mind. Also, as I said last week, I pushed the section 2 of your final project out to November 7th. I also sent an announcement letting you know that if you do want to send it to me, I'd be more than happy to take a look at it for you and give you some feedback before November 7th. That way you can work on it, and it will be penalty free. I'll provide you details on what I think you should improve, what's good, and help you along the way. Again, make sure that you look at that announcement with the description of what I'm looking for in section 2. It has a lot to do with segment targeting and positioning, which is also in that video as well. But today, what we'll be talking about is the supply chain management, and then the integrated marketing communications channel. So when we talk about marketing intermediaries that vary in specific ways in consumer and business markets, there's a lot of different terms for them. Sometimes they're called middlemen, agents or brokers, wholesalers, retailers, distributors, or dealers. And these act as that party that is in between the manufacturer and the end user of the product. Now, there's depending on what industry you're in, they may be described as different things. For instance, if you're an insurance agency or insurance business, these are called brokers or agents. If you're in products, it could be industrial products. It could be a wholesaler or a distributor. If you're a personal seller, you could just be the middleman. If you're in the car industry, this could be the dealer. So again, these are various terms and descriptions of the various intermediaries that happen. And it's important to understand the 3 functions and the activities related to that function. For instance, transactional function, right? The activities, they purchase products for resale as an agent or a supplier of product, and they sell by contacting potential customers. Logistical function, they create product assortments for several sources to serve customers, sorting, storing, and transporting to the customers. So logistics is a huge area in supply chain management. My dean at Baldwin Wallace used to be a logistical vice president for a freight company. So it's a huge area of business, and it's important to understand the different activities related to that function. It's also important to understand when we're talking about these intermediaries, we're talking about different channels for marketing too. We talk about direct channels, and then we also talk about indirect channels such as retailers, wholesalers to retailers, agents to wholesalers to retailers. So the structure of these organizations aren't always the same. And sometimes when we're talking about the different types of channels, you can see that the producer sometimes uses different marketing channels depending on the relationship with the intermediary. For instance, Swan Foods goes directly to the consumer. Toyota deals with the dealers and retailers that end up advertising to the consumer. Mars, they go through wholesalers and then to retailers and then consumers. Beverage companies do the same thing as Mars. They have wholesalers, regional wholesalers that go to individual retailers that hit the consumers. And then producers that go Mansar, such as Mansar Products, they deal with agents who deal with the wholesalers, who deal with the retailers, who deal with the consumers. So it's important when we talk about supply chain management that we understand how many intermediaries there are in between and the types of products and services being offered by those intermediaries. So when we talk about this too, these are some of the common marketing channels for business products. This right here was consumer products. So let's talk a little bit about business products. Again, we have a Caterpillar who goes through an industrial distributor. Stake Fastener Company who uses agents who goes to the industrial user. These agents serve as individual reps that go cover regions that sell directly to industrial users. Then we have the agent to industrial distributors to industrial users. These are a lot of lighting manufacturers, sprinkler manufacturers, where they have regional agents that sell to the industrial distributor that end up selling to the consumer, which is a business in this case. So when we talk about marketing channel structure and organization, we talk about internet marketing channels, direct marketing channels, and multi-channel marketing. These are just some examples of the different channel structures that are available to you. And again, Eddie Bauer serves as a great example of this with their storefronts, their online retailers, and then their multi-channel approach where they're in print, they're in radio, they're in automobiles, they're all over. They use a multi-channel approach. So this is a good example of using all three of those. The three types of vertical marketing systems: corporate, contractual, which is the most popular, and administrative. Again, vertical marketing systems differ between what type of business you have, but sometimes they go through wholesale sponsor chains, franchise programs, and retail programs. Now, this can affect the way that not only you market, but the way that you get that marketing funded. Sometimes working with corporate vertical systems, you have co-op opportunities where you share the expense, or the producer of the product actually pays for some of your marketing. So it's important to understand what type of marketing system you're getting into. Franchise programs, often one of the benefits of the franchise system, whether you're franchising a restaurant or anything else, is that the marketing's taken care of for you. It's a turnkey operation where you're just worried about the actual operations of the business. So it's important that you understand the three types of vertical marketing: corporate, contractual, and administered. Looking more into each one of these, the contractual systems. This happens. This is with franchising, manufacturer-sponsored retail franchises, wholesale franchises, service-sponsored retail, and sponsored franchise. These can be restaurants. These can be service type of businesses, such as lawn fertilizing companies. Weed Man is actually a franchise system where you can buy a Weed Man franchise and actually produce and actually service people's lawns with fertilizer. Whereas McDonald's is a individual restaurant franchise system where it's restaurant based. And then there's also corporate owned stores as well. So when we talk about marketing channel choice and management, some of the factors that affect the channel choice, we have to keep this in mind as density, target market coverage is an important thing uh, to keep in mind, because depending on the density of the target market, again, some of the distribution methods that you might use are intensive, exclusive, or selective based off of that density. Some of the buyer requirements with channel choices. It's things to keep in mind: information based, variety based, convenience based, or pre and post sale service. Profitability is an important consideration when choosing channels for marketing as well. Some of the key concepts behind logistics and supply chain management: customer requirements with logistics management, cost effective flow, customer service. Service is important to understand when you're dealing with logistics management, because of the fact that you want to serve the customer well, but again, you need to keep costs and you need to make sure that you're watching and keeping an eye on that. Think about Amazon. Think about how much money they spend in shipping. If you sign up for Amazon Prime, which is around $90 a year, and if you order at least 4 or 5 packages, it's 2 days shipping for free. You're basically making that money up in shipping costs, your membership to Amazon Prime. They set that price. Amazon's Prime set that price because of the average number of orders that a consumer makes throughout the year. So again, they have a logistics teams that helps set that price, because of the fact of making sure that they're not exceeding their cost with the average consumer. Uh, the automotive supply chain includes thousands of firms that provide functional component cars in a car. So when we talk about logistics for the automobile industry, there's a huge component, and this is very similar with computer manufacturers and other product manufacturers, where logistics teams are managing the raw materials, the components, the sub-assemblies of their products, and then the actual assembly of their automobiles, and then placing them into the marketing channel, which is the dealers, before it actually hits the consumers. So the logistics in the auto industry is quite expansive. So it's important to align a supply chain with your marketing strategy. You have to understand the consumer, you have to understand the supply chain, and you have to make both of them work together. We can see in that last slide that it's quite an extensive process. And if they don't all work together, you could cost your company millions and millions of dollars. And it's in an industry like the auto manufacturer, there isn't much margin to begin with. So you need to keep that in mind. When we talk about time, customer service factors, order cycle time, replenishment time, inventory delivery systems, we talk about companies like grocery stores, whether it's first in, last out, just in time inventory. There's different concepts here that we have to keep in mind, that customer service helps us dictate what we need to do as a company and as a logistics. Customer service helps us govern that. When we talk about IMC, Integrated Marketing Communications, we're talking about a cross-channel, we're talking about a cohesive approach where all your marketing communications interweave together to form one consistent messaging and one consistent communications plan. When we're talking about marketing, of course, we're talking about the promotional mix here. When we're talking about the IMC and the promotional mix, remember the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, placement, and promotion. So we talked about supply chain, which was the placement of the product. We're talking directly about the promotional element of the product. We want to inform buyers why our products, what makes them good. We want to inform them about our services. We want to persuade them to take action with our services. Now, remember that action can be either purchasing or it could be giving us information in exchange for a product. It doesn't have to be a sales objective. It can be a communications informational based objective as well. And then we also have to remind them of the benefits of using our products and services. An integrated marketing communications plan helps again mix these messages together to help us accomplish this. Now, there's 6 key elements of the communications process. We have the source, the encoding, the channel of communications, the message itself, decoding that message, and the receiver who receives that message. So this is how a marketing message usually takes place. We usually have a source of that marketing message, i.e. the maker, the business. When we encode that message, we usually use either an internal marketing department or an agency. And they encode that message. They decide, they create that message. They encode it to be specifically for that end receiver. Now, that end receiver could be the user of the product or could be the purchaser of the product. Now, those are 2 different things. They could be the same person or they could be completely 2 different things. For instance, we talk about the jitterbug. It's a cell phone for senior citizens. It's easy to use, but the messages are geared towards their older children who want to communicate with them. They are usually the ones buying that. They're usually worried about their elderly parents getting sick or getting hurt, and they're the ones buying it. So the message would be encoded to be received by them as opposed to the end user of that product. After we encode the message, we specifically encode the message for a channel of communication. The message itself has to compete with noise on either level. You'll notice that the noise is an important component to keep in mind because noise can block our communications message. So it's important to keep in mind that we have to account for that noise. We have to account for being heard through that noise. So it's important to keep that in mind. Next, really, when we talk about decoding the message, we have intended receivers and then we have unintended receivers. It's important that when we're creating that message, that the people that we intend, the receivers of those messages, are able to decode our message. And then finally, how that receiver interprets the message and goes about that is important to keep in mind. The response of that receiver is usually how they respond to that ad, either in sales or action. And then we want to make sure that we're understanding the feedback of that receiver. Did the action that we wanted to happen take place? That's usually how we measure the feedback when it comes to this. Now, the 5 elements of the promotional mix, we have advertising, personal selling, public relations, sales promotion, and direct marketing. Now, it's important to note that each one of these promotional elements has strengths and weaknesses. It's important to note, too, that it's most effective when you use all 5 elements of the promotional mix. And this is what I'm talking about when we talk about an integrated marketing communication strategy. It's important to use all 5 of these elements. Now, when we talk about the product life cycle, we can see how that the promotional activity must change with that life cycle. Now, this is what your bonus assignment is about, is identifying the stages of the product life cycles and then telling me, giving me an example of a product in that life cycle stage, whether it's in that introduction period, growth, maturity, or decline phase. And like I said, it's important to note that you may be wrong as far as the product being in that stage. However, your explanation of why you feel that product is in that stage is what I'm going to grade your bonus assignment on. So, getting back to this, as our products are in that stage, it kind of dictates what type of messaging we need to take place. For instance, if we have a brand new product that nobody's ever heard of, we need to inform, we need to educate, right? If they're in the growth stage, they already know about the product, so we need to persuade people to try our product. If it's in the maturity stage, if it's been out in the market for a while, we need to remind people that our product is still available, it's still out there, it still helps them solve problems and fulfill wants. And then finally, decline stage. Again, we want to phase out our product. We recognize that it's on the way out, and we want to make sure that we take every advantage of and go through our supplies and try to get rid of the products that we have on hand. When we talk about the stages, the buying stage of the decision stage, when the CDP, the consumer decision process, we talk about the pre-purchase stage, the purchase stage, and the post-purchase stage. Now, it's important to notice that during these stages, we're using different promotional tools. And this graph demonstrates the importance of the promotional elements and how they vary during each stage of that decision-making process. When we talk about push and pull strategy, it's quite a common marketing tactic used for those manufacturers or producers of product with distributors or other types of individuals selling their product. Now, when we're dealing directly with a push strategy, a manufacturer is mainly pushing the products through and marketing through the wholesaler, retailer, and consumer. Now, the pull strategy differs a little bit because we're advertising directly to the consumer and pulling them into the retailers and to the wholesaler, which helps increase the demand of our product. So you could see the different strategy here. The push strategy is that we're pushing the wholesaler and the retailer to really advertise and sell our products, where the pull strategy, we're handling it ourselves and we're pulling demand of our product from the consumer itself. Now, the important the promotional decision process includes planning, implementation, and evaluation. Planning is developing the promotional program, so you're going to identify your target audience, objectives, budget, select the channels, and create the promotional messages. The implementation is executing, and then finally the evaluation, which is important. A lot of companies forget that, is they have to evaluate the promotional program and see how it did according to and make the needed changes. Of course, we talked about the different how to identify your target audience and the behavioral targeting in the STP section. Again, it's very important for an IMC that you continue to do this. And then, of course, identifying the promotional objectives, whether it's awareness and interest, evaluation, trial, or adoption of your product and service. The last thing I want to talk about is the budgeting of an IMC plan. Now, there's a couple different strategies that are used. One of the most common use is the promotion a percentage of sales budgeting. Now, it's important to understand that a lot of big companies do this. A lot of big companies establish that a certain percentage of their sales can be dictated to the promotion of that sales. Problem with this is that a lot of big time manufacturers, a lot of big time companies use this method, and it can't be used by small businesses that much because of the fact that their revenue simply isn't that high. For instance, if you're a small business that you're selling around $500,000 and you only want to attribute 5% of your overall revenue to marketing, that may not be enough. It really depends on what your product is, what industry you're in. Because, for instance, if you're a lawyer, the cost of advertising is astronomical for law firms. So this percentage of marketing isn't going to work. But percentage of sales budgeting involves allocating funds to promotion as a percentage of anticipated sales or past sales in either dollars or units sold. Competitive parody budgeting. This is what happens when companies go in and they use their peers and their competitors as a way to budget for advertising. So, for instance, they take a look at their competitor and how much they're spending on advertising, which you can gain a good perspective of from using an agency that does a bit of research into this. We do this all the time at my agency for digital marketing. We take a look at how much they're spending online as far as online ads, and it allows us to put together a budget based on what their competitors are spending. Now, we usually only use this as a jumping off point and mix it in with actual objective to campaign budgeting, which we'll talk about here in a second. But it's a good place to put together some preliminary budgets based on what your competitors are doing. The all-you-can-afford budgeting involves allocating funds to promotion only after all other budget items are covered. For instance, if you have a revenue coming in and you've paid off all your costs and your overhead, and you have enough profit left over that you can dictate the rest of your revenue towards advertising, and you spend as much of that money as you can. Now, this is something I don't recommend. This is something that's it's kind of hard to put together budget planning and to put together planning based on whatever's left over revenue. Especially too, you're going to run into ups and downs, peaks and valleys of revenue, so you don't want to be not planning for certain months in advance with pre-planned marketing budget. Now, the objective and task budgeting determines promotional objectives and outlines the tasks to accomplish those objectives, and then determines the cost to perform those tasks. This is the objective and campaign budgeting that we use on a daily basis. We put together objectives and campaigns, and then budget and allocate budget towards those campaigns. And what happens is that we evaluate those campaigns afterwards, how well they performed on return on investment, and then we put together future campaigns based off of past performance of other campaigns. So that's really this really covers the next this past week and this future week of the supply chain management, as well as the IMC chapters. Again, you have quizzes that are due every Tuesday. The week 9 and week 10 quiz are due on these next Tuesdays. Don't forget that project section 2 is due on November 7th. If you have any questions, please let me know. as well as the newly assigned product lifecycle stage bonus. Have a great week. And again, I will accept Section 2 papers to take a look at all the way up into November 5th. That is next Sunday. And I'll take a look at them penalty free and give you my opinions and advice. And I look forward to reading all your papers. Have a great week.